think it can't get worse, it can, and it will. The dying's not done, the killing's not done. I promised my crew a long time ago I'd keep them alive.
I was afraid you were dead. Where's the rest of 3rd Platoon? We're it.
Sergeant Collier, I'm your new assistant driver.
Tank school? That's home.
I've never even seen the inside of a tank.
You will. I started this war killing Germans in Africa. Now I'm killing Germans in Germany. Been with these fine gentlemen for years.
These troops get by you, we're all dead in the water. All we got is you.
I won't ask you to do anything I haven't done myself. Comm check.
Photo check.
Brady check.
Bond check.
Bravo check.
Bar! All right! Hit that son of a bitch! Head out! Do your job! Do what you're here for!
Ideals are peaceful. History is violent.
Wait till you see it. See what? What a man can do to another man. I'm scared.
I'm scared too.
It will end soon, but before it does, a lot more people gotta die.
Well, you know we do get $1.35 a day, right? Best job I ever had. Best job I ever had.
Best job I ever had.
They're coming.
How many?
300 of them. There's 5 against 300.
We never run before, why are we gonna run now?
We're still in this fight. Still in this fight. Now!
Please welcome to stage Christopher Rosen from Huffington Post Entertainment as our moderator, John Bernthal, David Ayer, and Logan Lerman coming back from the restroom in just one moment. He's on his way.
Hello.
Come on, Logie.
Here comes Logan. He's running. We give him a round of applause, yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Dude, how's it going, everybody?
Yeah.
I'm not late, right?
No, it's not. It starts whenever it starts, right? That's the idea.
All right, this is
So-
like a trend now with me, these things.
Oh, what happened? It's happened before?
Yeah,
When?
recently. And when was it, Santa Barbara? Never mind. We don't need to talk
It's
about that.
okay.
Let's talk about the movie. All right.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the movie. We just saw the trailer. It's really intense. David, obviously, for those of you who don't know, he wrote Training Day, directed End of Watch. He's got a lengthy list of credits. They're all very modern, I would say, and kind of deal with Los Angeles and law enforcement. So obviously, there's a lot of themes in those movies I think you tackle in this, but the venue is way different. So, I mean, what made you want to do like a World War II movie then?
A good story is a good story. I had family who served in the war, and I served in the military myself, so I have a lot of insight into what that life is like. And what I remember about my service is the guys, these characters, these strange people that you'd be surprised are actually serving in uniform. Some amazing people. And when I see these World War II movies, often they're about a battle, they're about an event, and I wanted to make a movie that's just a slice of life, just a day in the life of a family of brothers who happen to live in a tank and kill people.
Right. And for you guys, the actors, John and Logan, I mean, what kind of research did you do into this? Like, did you talk to like servicemen or obviously it's World War II, it's a long time ago, but I mean, how did you guys prepare for this?
Yeah, we spoke with a good amount of World War II vets that shared their experiences with us, were really generous in giving us, good details in terms of their past and what happened to them during the war. We also met with soldiers that were about to be deployed, And the difference between modern wars and World War II, I mean, is really clear when you meet with both sides and you hear about what happened and what happens. I mean, that's just the part where we met with with soldiers and vets, but we did a lot of other work in terms of meeting with historians, learning about specifically the war, the war in Europe, the war in Africa, talking about tanks and learning all about our positions. We fought every day. We did a ton of stuff.
I mean, the movie at the end of the day, like David was saying, I think is about it's a family drama. It's about a family kind of traveling through hell in a metal box, and so it was essential that we were very bonded and we were very close, and that we actually were a family. So we had a very elaborate pre-production process. We got out there over 2 months early, and we sparred. We fought each other every single morning, and we did tank training in the afternoons, rehearsals at night. It was capped off by a boot camp led by Kevin Vance, who was our technical advisor. He's a real Navy SEAL, and he brought a couple of his team members to take us through a sort of mini BUDS SEAL course designed to absolutely break us down emotionally, physically, and then build us back up and really find a brotherhood, find a bond, and become a team. And so we walked onto set knowing each other, knowing how each other slept, how they ate, how they peed, how they pooped, how they did pretty much everything. And we were completely proficient on the tank by the time we started. We were driving the tank ourselves, firing it ourselves, loading it ourselves, taking it apart, putting it together. And I'm eternally grateful for that pre-production period, because I think that's where the movie was, that's where we really found each other and found these characters.
And these are real tanks. Like you saw in the trailer, it's kind of, there's a couple of action scenes where it's really incredible, where it's wow, this is not special effects. I guess what kind of challenge for you, David? I mean, what kind of challenges does it pose when you're using actual tanks like that? I think, do they break down? How long does that take? It just seemed because nowadays I feel like you could do everything probably in the computer or whatever, right? So to have the actual tanks there.
Yeah, I mean, nothing beats the real thing. And doing this movie, with fake tanks or builds, it's not going to be the same, and it's not going to look the same. And at the end of the day, it'd be really expensive. These things are 70-year-old antiques, and they're war machines, and they're designed to kill people, and they don't care who they kill, and they're dangerous. So I got Mike Pena driving around. This thing weighs 27 tons. It was a little scary to hand a vehicle like that over to an actor. I mean, these guys, really to their credit, learn how to operate the real positions on the tank. If the gunner moves the turret and his head's up out of the hatch, he can squash his head like a grape against the hatch. I mean, these are dangerous vehicles. And not only did they learn how to do everything a tanker does, but they learned how to do it well. And that's a credit to the time they put in. So by the time we were on set, they didn't have to worry about where am I putting my hands or what I'm doing. They just had to worry about what kind of nonsense I was going to tell them to get a performance out of them.
And everyone else around the set. We were yelling at them, get away, be smart about this.
What kind of nonsense would you tell them to get the performance out of them?
Pretty much anything. It was just good old-fashioned psychological warfare. There's no war, so I had to be the bad guys.
Right. The one of the things, I think setting a film at the end of the war is fascinating, because I feel like a lot of our maybe images of World War II now are kind of like Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, that kind of very, it's violent and brutal, but not necessarily this kind of desperation and really brutality. And I think your film really speaks to that in a way that maybe not a lot of, at least modern versions of World War II have. I guess, for the actors and stuff, did that kind of surprise you guys? Because this is stuff you're not really seeing. I mean, you're kind of even blurring the lines between good guys and bad guys a lot of times too, or even the Nazis, I feel like they're doing horrible, brutal things, and you're not obviously making the Nazis into good guys at all. But at the same time, you're you kind of some of the soldiers, you see where they're coming from. It's kind of just this is the situation and it sucks. So I mean, for the actors, did that surprise you at all, or kind of the nuance that David's script maybe handled this with?
Yeah, I mean, everything was surprising. I would say that's the key to David's process with his actors is to always be surprised by what you're going to see next. Not to see the sets before you get there, to take it in when you're filming. And yeah, it was shocking. And it's a different side of World War II that you don't see a lot in films. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, with the World War II films, and one thing we talked about a lot is in a lot of World War II films, you look at the American soldiers, and they're a lot of times portrayed as these kind of square-jawed, fearless kind of superheroes. And we in no way would argue for 1 second that these guys were among the greatest heroes that our country's ever had. And but for us, I think what David really pushed us to do is to try to get into the mindset and identify with the fear and the brutality and the torment that they'd been going through. These guys have been going through war, again, in a metal box for 4 years, where at any second they could go up like a Roman candle. And they had defied the odds. They're all living on borrowed time. So I think the idea is that to portray the fear and to portray how war-torn these guys were and to really show it and highlight it, dive into how dark that is, but then show that they went on forward, they moved forward anyway, and they moved forward through it. That in turn is way more heroic. And to portray real human beings, not superheroes. And hopefully that resonates.
Do you guys? Another thing I liked about it was that there's not like any kind of gauzy flashbacks where you're like getting to see these guys before the war necessarily, and you're kind of like focused like really on what they've done and like who they are within this tank. And I guess, as a writer, like how much was that a tough decision? Because obviously that's such an easy crutch probably to fall back on to get audience sympathies, to be like, oh, well, he might be acting like this in the war, but, back at home, he was a school teacher and they used to drink milkshakes at the sock hop and stuff. So it's like, was that a challenge for you not to like fall back onto sentimentality, let's say?
Yeah, it's a lot of these movies do have that sort of sepia patina about them, and people aren't behaving like real people, but more of these idealized versions of who we'd like them to have been. When you talk to the real guys, it was brutal out there, and they became who they needed to become to do these things. And it was a choice as a filmmaker to not go back and tell all these backstories and to load the audience with all this information about the characters, but to just simply throw the audience into the world the same way Logan's thrown into the world and experience it through his eyes and let these guys tell you who they are through their behavior. It's about live PTSD. The things these guys encountered were horrible and just as morally murky and just as heinous as anything happening, downrange today in, say, Iraq or Afghanistan. And despite everything these guys encounter, despite the horrors of war, it's just a day in the life, and there's nobility in getting up and doing your job no matter what, no matter the conditions. And it's interesting because people who don't like war movies love this movie, because it's not celebrating some great battle. It's these guys, it's their hearts, it's their life. It's what war does to people who are brothers or cousins or dads, people that we know. We can relate to these characters. We can really understand the pain that they're going through.
You mentioned, like, obviously the family aspect and putting these guys in a box and stuff together. Obviously, then casting is really key. How much time did you spend in casting this film and, like, making sure the guys all have, like, complementary chemistry?
Casting for me, it's really binary. I meet the person and I know instantly. And usually then it becomes sort of a dance so I can convince others that this is the right choice, or convince people that I have done some sort of diligence. When I really haven't, I made up my mind immediately. And it's just, I go by instinct. And for these guys, it's just as much about their specific personalities as much as it is about, are they going to program? Are they going to go through hell with me? Are they going to let me shape their lives over a long period of time? Are they willing to open their hearts up to me, even if I'm going to use that against them later? It takes a lot of courage to be an actor, and I think it takes even more courage to really take acting to its full depth.
Do you guys, like, I mean, just speaking of the casting, obviously Shia LaBeouf's in this. He's really great. I know you guys have talked a lot on this press tour about how, like, he, like, when really method, like, cut his face, he has, like, pulled his tooth out. I guess, I mean, so much has been made of that, but he's really good, and he's, like, really, really good as an actor, I think, in this. I mean, what was it about him that you thought would be really good for this part? Because I think he's great, and people kind of forget about that with all the stuff that, has been happening to him in the last few months.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. When I met him, he came to my house, we're hanging out in my kitchen, and I sensed a guy who was willing to commit. And the crazy Shia stories are fun, but it's not who he's about or what he is. That was something he engineered. I mean, you have a guy who's a child actor who now wants to be recognized for what he is, which is this incredibly talented, mature actor. This guy went and embedded with a National Guard unit, did a big field exercise, lived in the field with soldiers. He shadowed a United States Army chaplain so he could understand ministry, he could understand the word, the faith, the good news, how to talk to soldiers, how to have scripture in his heart so he could portray that faith on the screen in an accurate and responsible way, which is something we don't really see in film these days. He was incredibly giving of his time on set, a lot of fun. When things were really bad on set and miserable and brutal, he had a way of just saying the right thing and kind of keeping the energy up. And I know he did a lot for these guys to keep the energy up because it's exhausting. There is no war. No one's shooting at these guys. They have to pretend. And so sometimes Shia would be the war and help me out.
Like what? Like how would he do that, Logan?
How would he keep the
energy up?
Keep the energy up?
Keep you on your toes.
I would say this about
He'd yell
Shia.
at me.
Yeah, he'd yell. No, Shia's the guy who kind of set the bar for everybody else in a way. I mean, would you say that's accurate too?
100%.
He was like the most committed actor I think I've ever worked with. And no, definitely I've ever worked with. And he set the bar for everybody else to kind of keep up with him in terms of, commitment and how much he gave to the process. He was there at all times. Like he didn't, I mean, there were moments where he didn't have to be on set. He was there every single day working harder than anybody else. And I'd say that his commitment is what really, I guess kept everybody's spirits up too, was the fact that he was given so much. We wanted to give as much as him.
I mean, you say, he cut his face and he pulled his tooth out, and then you say, but he also gave a great performance, and I just kind of throw that back at you and be like, yeah, dude, he cut his face and he pulled his tooth out for this movie. You know, like he did that, and
bring authenticity to it.
Yeah, I mean, Shia doesn't mess around, and as far as people saying crazy stuff about him, whatever, and his antics. There's nobody better to get into it with, and you will only hear great things from all of us, and he's as committed a guy as I've ever met, and he's got as big a heart as anybody I've ever met, and I love that dude.
And I think that heart comes across. I mean, his character is I think, like you said, there's a familial aspect to this film, and obviously Brad's character is named War Daddy, so he is like the father figure, but I really, like watching it, it felt like Shia was kind of like the maternal figure almost for the group, which I think is really kind of cool. You guys, if you see the film, you will see that also, I guess. Is that kind of what you were going for too with their...
How nuts is that to have that freaking guy as your mom, dude? Think about that. But you got it, man. You're right.
You have specifically, Brad, and you have a father kind of son dynamic. I would say a little bit. I mean, obviously it's not a traditional one, but I mean well, maybe in the sequel or whatever, right? You could be. That's the spoiler alert at the end. I don't know, but what was that like working? Brad, what did you expect? I guess from him, and then from Brad, what did you expect from him, and then how did this experience exceed those expectations, or
I mean, I didn't have any expectations. Okay. I could say that working with him, he's extremely generous. He is someone who, again, gives a lot, but asks for very little in return. And in terms of working with him, he was just as dedicated as any one of us, and worked extremely hard. And in terms of our relationship, there was a lot of conflict, between Norman and War Daddy. So I guess to keep that level of respect, between the two characters and keep the conflict, I'd say once we started filming, so we kind of kept the distance between us, and then really, I guess, hashed it out in our scenes together, And yeah, it was interesting. It was an interesting process and experience.
Does that help you? Like, obviously, your character comes in, he's the outsider. This is a group of guys who have been together from Africa, like Brad says in the trailer, from Africa throughout, like, all the way, and now they're all the way into Germany. I mean, for you, then, was that, like, did you stay away from the rest of the guys at first to, like, make that even more believable on screen, or does that not necessarily?
No, I didn't stay away from them. I mean, I got really close with the guys. We spent a lot of time together. My objective was just to not conform to what they were doing. Which irritated them at times. Irritated them, I'd say. I'm not sure, but I just tried to be, as different as possible.
He was a rebel.
A little bit.
Did that annoy the rest of you guys then? That he was a rebel?
Annoy us?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Nah, I love me some Logan, man.
Well, now, I'm sure now you love you.
Yeah. No, I mean the deal. I mean, look again. Everybody kind of. It was the commitment on this movie. I hate hearing actors talk about how committed they are. Personally, it's like automatic douchebag alert goes out. But that being said,
So committed.
we were pretty committed. But the commitment on this was borderline. It was borderline scary at times. There's nothing that, this is not the kind of movie that, you wrap and then you go and you go to the pub and get a beer, or you go and, let's go catch a show, or, go pick up women. It was just, anything that was a distraction, anything that wasn't the movie and staying in a mindset of complete and utter darkness was the enemy, and we pushed it away from each other. I'm serious. And it was, for me, it was making the movie all day, rapping, going and fighting the sensei for a few rounds, eating some chicken, going to sleep, starting over. And everybody had their little, thing like that. And so I think that, for Logan, part of the deal was, we needed to beat him around a little bit, and we needed to, he was an outsider, and we needed to sort of maintain that, while spending 5, 6, 7 months straight with the guy, and he was by no means an outsider. He had been through everything we had been through. So to maintain that, we had to torture him a lot, and my hat goes off to him. He's a tough ass dude, and he stuck through it. He never complained. He went through it all. He went through some pretty bad stuff, honestly.
I want to ask you both. You guys have worked with so many great directors, and just the last year you worked with Martin Scorsese on Wolf of Wall Street. You did Noah with Darren Aronofsky. So not to totally put you on the spot, but I mean, what does David bring that maybe you were not expecting as a filmmaker, I guess? Not that you have to compare him to Martin Scorsese or Darren Aronofsky, but I mean, like, what do you think, like, what did he do that was, like, exciting for you as an actor?
For me, it's a tour. I mean, it's there's nobody like him, period. And, look, I've been really lucky with a lot of the directors that I've gotten to work with, and I've gotten to work with a lot of guys who everybody, they're great, and they've been great, and everybody knows they're great, and I've been very, very blessed to have had that experience in there, to work for them and work with them. David is great. Everybody knows he's great, but he's hungry as hell, and he takes no prisoners, and he demands absolute and utter full 100% commitment from everybody every day, and he will not tolerate any. It doesn't matter if you're Brad Pitt or if you're my monkey ass. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta, if you're in, you're in. And so it's like, for me, and coming from sort of the life that I come from and the background I come from, that really, I love that. I love having so many people in Hollywood over the years have been trying so hard. So many guys try to make movies about men and brotherhood and this kind of world. He's one of the only people who can do it right, and that's because he doesn't just talk the talk. He walks the walk. He's a vet. He's been through stuff in his life. The guy's been in some scraps. The guy's like, I mean, it's weird as hell saying this to him because he's right next to me, but he's a genuine badass dude and a wonderful artist at the same time. So it's just a different thing, man. You do one of his movies. He said it, like, you got to go through hell, like you got to do it. He will torture you. He will come up to you and whisper things in your ear that will shake your entire body that you'll never forget. I'm still a little bit nervous sitting next to him. I'm not scared of anybody, dude. I'm not. And like he you know. So anyway, I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean.
Go ahead.
Ditto. Let's see. No, you know, following that, you know, I have to say that, you know, working with David is an experience. You know, it's a ride, and once you commit to it and you get on, you know, it's a long ride. The difference between, you know, David and other filmmakers as well is the fact that you have to commit to his process, and his process is, you know, we had about 4 months before filming, in which we were doing a lot of different things, a lot of different training, and not knowing what was coming next, and just giving ourselves and you know relinquishing control to David, and he puts you in his character's shoes in a way that other directors don't, and he creates environments where you're free creatively to explore scenes in ways you wouldn't even imagine exploring them, and it's a creatively amazing experience collaborating and working with David.
I just want to ask David, when you know, John mentioned this a little. I feel like a lot of your stuff is like you really focus in on you know, like masculinity in the face of like life and death situations, and obviously with your background and stuff that makes sense. But I mean, why? It's such a fertile storytelling ground for you. I mean, like, I guess what specifically are you hoping to solve with this? I mean, not solve, but you know what I mean. Like, what do you like love about that specific, you know, theme?
Guys are different than females. You know, we're much more shut down emotionally. There's a lot of rules in how we interact. There's rules to our friendship. There's rules to our social interaction, and it's fascinating to explore, you know, male relationships, male bonding, and especially between people who face danger and whose lives are at risk. You know, whether it's law enforcement or the military. You know, someone said to me that I make chick flicks for guys. You know, because they go into those realms of relationships, and that's what Fury is at its core. It's a relationship movie. You know, it's 5 guys in the army killing Nazis, but it's a serious look at what that does to people, to their hearts, to their souls. What's the price you pay? How does Brad send guys he cares for and loves into battle to potentially die? How do you protect someone you love when you're asking them to die? You know, so these paradoxes to me are fascinating.
Yeah, and I know we're going to open up for a question now. There's a great scene in the film where Brad kind of like kneels down between 2 tanks, and you kind of see that on his face. It's really good. Anyway, so I think we're going to open up to questions. So anybody have any? We have this gentleman right here in the front.
Hey, David. My father was also in the Army, so I just want to say thank you for your service. You guys really are heroes. Were there any I'm sure, did you put any of your emotional experiences in the Army with you and your, I guess, what you've gone through into the movie?
Yeah, I was actually a squid. I was on a nuclear submarine, you know. But, you know, our green brothers are cool, too, you know what I mean? But it sucks to be the new guy in a line unit. It's just terrible. And especially when I was in, there was hazing, a little more, you know, different world now. So, you know, I really identified with Logan's journey as being the new guy in a unit, and that also helped me sort of create and put pressure on him, you know, as an actor, because I understand that kind of hazing process.
Hi, this question is for Logan and John. As you were portraying these characters, was there a particular facet or a particular element of your character that was difficult for you to embody, and how did you approach that challenge?
I'd say difficult element would be, I mean, this movie takes place in one day, and I guess Norman's transformation in a way, his steady, you know, nervous breakdown in a way was hard to map out and to justify for myself the moments where it would make sense for him to gradually become who he is towards the end of the film. So doing that was probably the most difficult aspect.
I guess one of the things that was a challenge, I guess, is the way in which my character Grady, he's a loader, and it's a very specific role in the tank. A lot of the guys in the military, long conversations with the Navy SEALs especially, and guys who are in combat for a long time talk about this thing called the release of the kill, and there's something about when you're in combat and you've seen your brothers die right next to you and you've experienced this brutality. There's something about firing your weapon down range, seeing the enemy, and there's a release that if you actually get to kill the enemy, there's a pressure that's released. And Grady has gone through the war now 4 years. He doesn't fire a weapon. He doesn't engage with the enemy. He doesn't see the enemy. What he does is, with furiosity and tenacity, he just has to keep loading shells into that cannon as quickly, as rapidly, and efficiently as he possibly can. But he never gets that release. He's just banging them in, banging them in, banging them in. And so I think he goes around with this, this pressure, this unsatisfied, urge, but it's always got to be sort of, it's always got to, have its root in fear, in real fear, because at any point, while he's just doing his manual labor, they could be doing the exact same thing in a plant. At any second, he could go up like a Roman candle. So it was hard to just, it's not that it was hard, it was just the challenge was to maintain that, always, because if you let that go a little bit, it starts to become, look, at the end of the day, we're, I've said before, we're monkeys who wear makeup and say lines. We're playing pretend. So we got to try to make it as real as possible. So that can be hard. That can be hard to try to, just never let that down even for a second,
We have a Twitter question, and John, I apologize if this is hack, but someone wants to know, what's tougher to fight, fake soldiers or fake zombies?
I don't understand the question. I'm just playing. I don't know, man. Shit. Yeah, I used to do the show called, yeah. I don't know, Yeah, I don't know what to say about that, dude. Yeah, probably, I don't know. I ain't got nothing. Sorry, man. Rock and roll, but thank you. Seriously, thank you. I just don't know what to say. Yeah, right on.
This question's for David. You've written some great movies, very intense scenes throughout, harsh times especially, but all in the urban landscape. So how do you approach a movie like this that is essentially a period piece as a writer? Obviously, when you show up on set, you've got the great wardrobes and all the set pieces and the tanks, but as a writer, how do you approach
Research. So the same way I did visual research and looked at thousands of photographs of the last few months of the war in order to build my visual look, I went back and I read as many original period documents as I could. So I've read stacks of Army after action reports, just looking for the little detail here and there I can pluck out. There's a scene during his first combat engagement where he's asked to shoot dead bodies. Sounds pretty callous and grotesque, but there's actually an Army guidance that was issued to the armored division saying to do exactly that because the Germans would pretend they're dead and jump up and shoot people with rockets. So pretty much everything in the film comes from somewhere, has its source, down to individual lines. It's really just, you have to become as literate in the world as possible, as familiar with the world as possible until you can kind of speak it like a second language. I'd listen to period radio broadcasts. I'd watch movies from the time. I read books, novels. I looked at the novels that people were reading back then and read them because they, as much as us, absorb a lot of our mannerisms and speech patterns from popular culture. So I just was as immersive as possible and then try to write with that voice, but also to do it in a way that's not kind of off-putting, because you see these period movies sometimes and they just don't sound like real people. And I try to avoid that as much as possible.
Nice. I think that's all the time we have for questions, and that's it. So thank you, Logan, John, and David for joining us here.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Fury is out on Friday, October 17th, so you can see it there. Thanks, guys.